There are no men left on this planet, the alien woman whispered to me. Eli had never seen a place so quiet. The moment his spaceship touched down on the surface of the planet, a strange stillness filled the air. The ground beneath him was cracked and uneven, with broken pieces of buildings scattered around. Once this had been a thriving colony. Now it was a ghost town. Eli stepped out of the ship, taking in his surroundings. He adjusted his equipment and looked up at the sky. The bright orange sun hung low, casting long shadows across the landscape. The air was thick, not with the usual scent of dust, but with something ancient, like the remnants of a forgotten time. The planet's surface was full of strange markings and symbols, almost as if someone had once carved stories into the land. Eli ran his fingers over one of the carvings, but there was no way to read it. His mission was clear: find out what happened to the human colony that had disappeared years ago. No communication, no signs of distress, just silence. He activated his communicator, but as expected, there was no signal. He was alone. The isolation felt heavier now than ever before. With a heavy sigh, Eli set off toward the nearest structure, a large building that had once been the heart of the colony. The metal door creaked open with a push, and he stepped inside. The building smelled of rust and dust, with papers scattered all over the floor. There were old data pads on the tables, some still flickering with faint light as if they were trying to stay alive. Eli picked one up, but it was dead. He looked around the room, his mind racing. What could have happened here? There had to be a reason why everyone was gone. As he walked through the corridors, his footsteps echoed loudly in the empty halls. The silence was unnerving. It felt like the entire planet was holding its breath. Eli reached the central room, a large, open space with windows that offered a view of the vast, deserted landscape. There was no sign of life, no evidence of any struggle. It was as if everyone had simply vanished. He continued exploring the building, searching for any clue that could explain the disappearance. The further he went, the more he felt like something was watching him, even though there was no one around. He paused in front of a door, its surface marked with strange symbols, much like the ones outside. There was a feeling about it, a sense of foreboding. But Eli was a man of action, and his curiosity pushed him forward. He opened the door, revealing a dark room. His flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing a tall figure standing in the corner. Eli froze. The figure was humanoid, but its skin had a strange, almost shimmering quality. Its hair was a silvery white, and its eyes glowed faintly in the dark. Eli stepped back, his heart racing. This wasn't what he expected. The figure moved, gliding toward him with an eerie grace. Eli instinctively reached for his weapon, but hesitated. There was something about this being that didn't feel threatening. "You're not from here?" the figure spoke, its voice soft but clear. It was a woman, but her voice didn't sound like any woman he had ever heard. It was both foreign and familiar, as if it echoed from another time. Eli tried to speak, but his words caught in his throat. The woman didn't seem to notice his hesitation. She took a step closer, her eyes never leaving his. "There are no men left on this planet," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. The words lingered in the air like a warning, heavy with meaning. Eli didn't know how to respond. His mind was racing, trying to process what was happening. He had come here looking for answers, but this was something he hadn't expected. "What do you mean?" he finally asked, his voice shaky. The woman's gaze softened, and she moved even closer, her presence filling the room. "My people were once a great civilization, strong and proud," she said, her voice carrying a sadness that made Eli's chest tighten. "But that was before the war, before the plague. Now I am the last one left." Eli felt a pang of sympathy for the woman, but he was also confused. How could she be the last one left, and why was she telling him this? "Why are you here?" she asked, her eyes narrowing slightly. Eli shook his head. "I'm here to find out what happened to the human colony. They vanished without a trace." The woman studied him carefully, as if trying to read his very soul. "You came to the wrong place, Eli. This planet no longer holds the answers you seek." She paused, her gaze lingering on him, and there was something almost melancholic in her eyes. "But perhaps you can help me." Eli raised an eyebrow. "Help you?" She nodded slowly. "There is more to this world than you know, more than you will understand, but I will show you if you are willing to listen." Eli felt a mixture of curiosity and unease. He didn't know who this woman was or what she wanted from him, but there was something about her presence that drew him in. Against his better judgment, he stepped forward. "What do you need from me?" he asked. She smiled faintly, though her expression remained clouded with sorrow. I need you to understand, to see what has been lost. She gestured to the vast emptiness outside the building. The men are gone, but there is still hope. You will find it in the ruins. Eli's mind swirled with questions, but he didn't speak. The alien woman turned and walked toward the doorway, beckoning him to follow. As he stepped into the corridor behind her, Eli couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. There was so much more to this planet than he had ever imagined. And somehow, this strange woman seemed to be the key to unlocking its secrets. Eli followed the alien woman through the dimly lit halls of the building, his mind still reeling from her words. There are no men left on this planet. The phrase echoed in his thoughts, repeating itself over and over. He couldn't understand it. What could she possibly mean? He had come here for answers, but the more he learned, the more questions piled up. The woman, whose name he had yet to learn, moved swiftly through the corridors. She didn't seem to hesitate, as though she knew the layout of the place like the back of her hand. Eli struggled to keep up, his mind distracted by the strange feeling that had settled in his chest. Something about her presence felt both comforting and unsettling at the same time. They finally reached a large room near the back of the building. It was filled with technology that Eli had never seen before. Strange machines hummed quietly in the corners, and walls covered in glowing symbols flickered with light. Some of the equipment looked old, while others seemed almost new, like they had been recently activated. The woman stopped in front of one of the machines and turned to face Eli. Her eyes, glowing faintly in the low light, studied him for a moment. "This is the heart of what remains," she said softly, almost reverently. Eli stepped forward, his curiosity piqued. "What is it?" he asked, glancing around the room. The machines hummed with an energy he couldn't comprehend, and the air seemed to buzz with some hidden force. "The technology of my people," she replied, her voice thick with emotion. "It was meant to preserve us, to ensure that our species would survive." She paused, her gaze shifting to the equipment with a mixture of longing and sorrow. "But it failed, and now I am the last." Eli could feel the weight of her words. This alien woman, who had been alive for who knew how long, was the last of her kind. He could see it in her eyes, the loneliness, the burden of surviving when everything else had been lost. He wanted to ask her more about her people, but he sensed that there was something more important happening here, something beyond her tragic past. "How did it happen?" Eli asked, trying to steer the conversation toward something more concrete. "What destroyed your people?" She turned away for a moment, her face cast in shadow. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter, tinged with bitterness. A war that destroyed everything. My people, once powerful and united, were torn apart by conflict. And then the plague came. It wiped out the men. They were the first to fall. Eli felt a chill run through him. "The men," he repeated, confused. He had heard her mention this before, but it didn't make sense. "Why only the men? What happened to them?" "The disease targeted them," she explained. "It was designed to. They were the warriors, the fighters, the ones who protected us. But in the end, they couldn't protect themselves." She looked at Eli, her eyes darkening. "And now there are no more, only me." There was a long silence between them. Eli didn't know how to respond. The weight of her words hung heavy in the air, and the room, with all its strange technology, seemed to close in around him. He had come to this planet looking for answers about the human colony, but instead, he had uncovered a tragedy that spanned centuries. A planet once full of life was now a hollow shell, its history all but erased by time and disease. After a moment, the woman's voice broke the silence. "You're not from here, Eli. You're different. I can sense it." Eli frowned, unsure of what she meant. "Different. I'm just a human, just like the rest of them." The woman shook her head slowly. "No, there is something about you, something familiar." She stepped closer, her gaze intense. "I know you didn't come here for this, but you have a part to play. You always have." Eli felt a shiver run down his spine. Her words were like a puzzle, each one a piece he couldn't quite fit together. He didn't understand what she meant, but he couldn't shake the feeling that she was right. There was something about this place, about her, that felt connected to him. He didn't know how, but somehow he felt drawn to this world, to its lost history. "How can I help?" he asked, his voice almost a whisper. He wasn't sure why he was asking it, but the question slipped from his lips before he could stop it. The woman's gaze softened, and for the first time since they had met, she smiled. It was a small smile, tinged with sadness, but it was a smile nonetheless. "You have to understand," she said gently. "You are the key. This world, this planet can be reborn, but only if you help me unlock the secrets of the past, only if you help me revive what was lost. Eli was silent for a long time. He didn't know what to say, didn't know how to respond. The idea of reviving an entire species, of bringing the men of her people back from the dead, seemed impossible. But there was something in her voice, something in the way she looked at him that made him believe it was possible. "I'll help," he said finally, his voice steady despite the turmoil swirling inside him. "What do you need me to do?" The woman's expression turned serious. She led him to a table covered with strange, alien symbols. "This is the last piece of the puzzle," she said, her voice filled with determination. "This machine holds the key to restoring my people, but it can only be activated by someone with a connection to the past. Someone from outside, someone like you?" Eli didn't fully understand what she meant, but the urgency in her voice was enough to push him forward. He placed his hand on the table, feeling the strange warmth of the machine beneath his fingertips. As he did, he felt a jolt of energy shoot through him, and the symbols on the table began to glow. The woman stepped back, watching him closely. "This is it," she whispered. "You've begun the process, but there is still much to do." Eli's heart raced as the machine hummed to life. He didn't know what was happening, but he could feel the energy building, the power of something ancient awakening. The weight of what he had just agreed to sank in. He wasn't just here to find out what had happened to a human colony anymore. He was part of something much bigger, something that could change the future of this entire planet. The woman's voice interrupted his thoughts. "You don't fully understand what you've just done," she said, "but you will. In time, you will." Eli looked at her, uncertainty swirling in his chest. He had no idea what the future held, but for the first time since arriving on this planet, he felt a spark of hope. Whatever was coming next, he was ready. Eli stood frozen as the machine hummed to life. The energy in the room grew stronger with each passing second, and the symbols on the table glowed brighter. His heart raced as he tried to process what had just happened. He had barely touched the surface of this strange technology, and already it seemed to respond to him in ways he couldn't explain. The alien woman, who still hadn't given her name, watched him closely. There was something in her eyes, a mixture of hope and desperation. Eli could see how much this meant to her. She was depending on him, and somehow he had already become a part of this strange, forgotten world. "What is this machine?" he asked, his voice steady despite the confusion swirling inside him. "It's the last of its kind," she replied, her voice quiet but filled with emotion. "It was designed to restore what was lost. It can bring life back to this planet, but it requires something more than just technology." She paused, her gaze turning inward. "It requires sacrifice." Eli frowned. "Sacrifice? What do you mean?" She looked at him, her expression grave. "It's not just a machine, it's a vessel of sorts designed to bring back the lost, to awaken the men of my species, but it cannot be done by force. It requires someone who understands what has been lost, someone who can connect with the past." Eli didn't know what to say. The weight of her words sank in. He had just touched the machine and it had responded to him. Was that what she meant? Did the machine somehow recognize him, or was it something else entirely? "I don't understand," Eli admitted, his voice quieter now. "How could I possibly be the one to fix this? I'm just a human. I don't know anything about your people or their technology." She took a step closer to him, her eyes softening. "You are more connected to this world than you realize, Eli. Your presence here. It's not a coincidence. You were meant to come here to this planet to help me." Eli opened his mouth to argue, but the words caught in his throat. There was something about her certainty that made him hesitate. She believed in him. He didn't understand why, but the feeling in his chest told him she wasn't wrong. "So what now?" Eli asked, still trying to wrap his mind around everything. "What's the next step?" The woman's face turned serious again. "Now we wait. The machine has begun its work, but it will take time. We need to prepare for what's to come." Eli didn't know what that meant, but he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't leaving this place until he understood it. He had come here to find answers, and now he had a purpose. The alien woman, who had once been alone in this forgotten world, was no longer alone. Eli was a part of something much bigger than himself. The hours passed slowly as Eli and the woman worked together in the room filled with strange technology. The machine continued to hum, its power growing with each minute. Eli found himself drawn to it, feeling an unexplainable connection to the device, as though it was calling to him. The woman watched him carefully but said little. She had already explained that the process was not instant. The machine would take time to restore what had been lost, but it needed more than just time. It needed preparation, patience, and understanding. As the night stretched on, Eli's thoughts began to drift. What was he really doing here? Was he part of some grand plan, or was he just another explorer caught in the web of an ancient, long-forgotten tragedy? He couldn't shake the feeling that everything was connected, that his arrival on this planet had been more than just chance. He glanced at the woman. She was sitting on the floor, her eyes closed in quiet contemplation. She looked so serene, yet there was a sadness to her that never seemed to fade. Eli wondered how long she had been alone, carrying the weight of her people's history on her shoulders. How long had she waited for someone to come, someone to help her restore what was lost? "Why did you trust me?" Eli asked, his voice soft. "You barely know me. Why put your faith in someone like me?" The woman opened her eyes and looked at him, her gaze piercing. "Because I know that you can help me. There's something about you, Eli, something in your spirit. I can see it. You were meant to be here." Eli didn't know how to respond to that. It felt like too much. How could she be so sure? How could anyone be sure of anything when everything seemed so uncertain? But her confidence was undeniable. She believed in him, and for reasons he couldn't explain, he believed in her too. "We should rest," she said after a long pause. "We'll need our strength for what comes next." Eli nodded. He didn't argue. There was nothing more they could do tonight. The machine would take its time, and they could do nothing but wait. He lay down on the floor, his mind racing with questions, but as the quiet hum of the machine filled the room, exhaustion overtook him. His eyes closed, and he drifted into a deep sleep. Eli woke up to the soft glow of the machine's lights. It was still dark outside, but there was a strange energy in the air, something that felt alive. He sat up slowly, stretching as he looked around. The alien woman was already awake, her eyes locked on the machine. "It's time," she said, her voice low and serious. "The process has begun." Eli stood and walked over to her, feeling the weight of her words. He didn't know what to expect, but he could feel the change in the air. Something was happening, something that would change everything. "I'm ready," Eli said, though he wasn't sure if he truly was, but there was no turning back now. They had come this far. The woman nodded. "We have to be prepared for anything. The future of my people depends on what happens next." Eli glanced at the machine, his heart racing. There was so much he didn't understand, so much that was beyond his grasp. But for the first time since he arrived on this planet, he felt like he was a part of something greater than himself. The machine whirred louder now, its lights flashing brighter, its energy filling the room. Eli stepped closer to it, his hand hovering over the surface, feeling the power pulse beneath his fingertips. "I'm ready," he repeated, though this time his voice was steadier. He had no idea what was going to happen, but he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't turn back now. The fate of this world, of this woman and her people, rested in his hands. The machine hummed louder, its energy growing with each passing second. Eli stood before it, his hand still hovering over its surface. There was a strange force pulling him toward it, something that felt both powerful and unsettling. The woman, whose name Eli still hadn't learned, watched him closely. Her eyes never left him, as if she were waiting for something to happen, waiting for him to make the next move. "It's happening," she said softly, her voice almost lost in the sound of the machine. Her words were a mixture of hope and fear, and Eli couldn't help but feel the weight of them. The fate of her people of this world seemed to rest entirely on what happened next. "What happens now?" Eli asked, his voice barely audible over the noise. His heart was racing, a mixture of excitement and anxiety filling him. He had never felt like this before, as if everything in his life had led him to this exact moment. "Now we wait," she replied, her eyes distant as she stared at the machine. "It will not be quick, it never is. But it is the only way." Eli nodded, though he didn't fully understand what she meant. The machine was powerful, but it was also mysterious. He had barely scratched the surface of its secrets, and yet he could feel its energy coursing through the room as if it were alive. The woman sat down on the floor, her posture relaxed but alert. "There are many things you don't know, Eli, things you won't understand until the time comes." Eli turned to look at her, confusion in his eyes. "What do you mean? What don't I understand?" She met his gaze, her eyes piercing as if searching for something deep inside him. "You think you're here by accident. You think you're just a traveler, someone who stumbled upon a dead world, but you're wrong." Eli frowned. "I don't understand. I came here because of the colony." "That's all." The woman's lips curled into a faint smile. You think you came for the colony, but that's not why you're here. You're here because this planet chose you. This machine chose you. Eli felt a chill run down his spine. Chosen by what? The energy of this world, she explained, her voice steady. This planet, its history, its people, they're all connected to you in ways you can't comprehend. The machine is alive, Eli. It has a will of its own, and it has called to you. Eli shook his head, struggling to understand. I don't feel connected to this place. I'm just a human from Earth. I don't belong here. You belong here more than you realize, she said softly. Your presence is what the machine needs, your DNA, your essence. It's why the process has already begun. Eli was silent for a moment, letting her words sink in. The idea that he had been chosen felt impossible. He was just a man from a distant planet searching for answers. But there was something about the way the woman spoke, the conviction in her voice that made him pause. Maybe she was right. Maybe this was no accident. The room was filled with the low hum of the machine, and Eli felt the tension build. He didn't know what was happening, but something inside him told him that this moment was important. The fate of the planet, of the woman sitting in front of him, depended on him. As if on cue, the machine's energy shifted. The lights flickered, and the sound of its hum deepened. Eli stepped closer, his heart racing. Something was happening. The air around him felt charged, almost electric. He could feel it in his chest, a sensation he couldn't explain, but it was undeniable. The woman stood up, her face serious. It's beginning, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. We don't have much time. Eli turned to face the machine. He wasn't sure what he was supposed to do, but he felt the pull. It was as if the machine were calling to him, asking him to take part in something beyond his understanding. His hand hovered over the surface again, and this time he didn't hesitate. He placed it gently on the machine. At first, nothing happened. The machine remained still, its lights flickering softly. But then, slowly, a pulse of energy shot through the room. Eli gasped, his body trembling as the machine responded. It was unlike anything he had ever felt, the power, the energy, the ancient force surging through him. The woman stepped forward, her eyes wide with both awe and fear. It's working, she said, her voice trembling. It's finally working. Eli felt his mind race. Was it really working? Was he really helping? He didn't know what to think, but he couldn't pull his hand away. The energy felt too powerful, too real. His body tingled, and he felt his consciousness stretching, expanding. For a moment, it was as if he were no longer just himself. He was connected to everything. Suddenly, there was a blinding flash of light. Eli stumbled back, his vision blurry as the light overwhelmed him. For a moment, he lost all sense of time and space. He could feel the pulse of the machine deep inside him, echoing in his very bones. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the light faded. Eli blinked, trying to clear his vision, but everything around him felt different. The woman was standing beside him, her face filled with disbelief. It's done, she whispered. It's really done. Eli looked around, his heart pounding. The room was exactly the same as it had been, but there was something more. The machine, which had been humming so loudly before, was now silent, but the air felt charged, as if the very atmosphere had changed. What happened? Eli asked, his voice shaky. What did I do? The woman didn't answer immediately. She simply stood there, staring at him, her eyes wide. You've awakened them, she said finally, her voice filled with wonder. The men, they're coming back. Eli's stomach churned. The men, what do you mean? I don't understand. But before she could answer, the ground beneath them trembled. Eli stumbled, reaching out for something to steady himself. The air shifted, becoming heavy with an unknown force. He looked around, his pulse quickening. It's not over, the woman said, her voice tense. The men are returning, but we must be ready. The world will change. Everything will change. Eli's mind raced as the trembling intensified. What had he done? What was happening now? The machine had activated something deep inside the planet, and Eli couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of something monumental, something that would change the course of history forever. The woman turned to him, her face serious. We need to prepare. The men will come, but we can't let them take control. This planet, this world, will need us both to survive. Eli nodded slowly, his heart still racing. Whatever was coming next, he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't just an observer anymore. He was part of something much larger, something that would shape the future of this planet, and perhaps the entire galaxy. The ground continued to tremble beneath Eli's feet. The sound of rumbling echoed through the walls, reverberating in the air like a warning. He could feel the weight of what was happening, the heavy presence of something ancient awakening deep within the planet. The woman beside him, whose calm demeanor had been a constant since their first meeting, now seemed tense, her face set in a determined expression. She looked at the machine, which had fallen silent after the surge of energy had passed, as if awaiting the next move. "What's happening?" Eli asked, his voice steady despite the rising fear in his chest. "The men are coming back," she repeated, her words almost a whisper filled with awe. "The process has begun, but it's not just the machine that's changing things. Something is stirring within the planet itself, something ancient, something that's been waiting for this moment." Eli couldn't help but feel a sense of dread. The air was thick with anticipation, as if the planet itself were holding its breath. His heart raced in his chest, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he was on the verge of something that would forever change the course of history. "We need to be ready," the woman said, her voice firm now. "This is only the beginning, the men who are coming back. They won't be the same as they were. They've been lost for centuries, but they're waking up, and they might not understand what has happened in their absence." Eli nodded, still trying to grasp everything she had told him. The machine had worked, but now the planet was responding in ways he didn't fully understand. The idea that the men of this world were coming back, that they had been gone for so long, left him feeling conflicted. How could they return after such a long time? "What kind of men would they be? Do you know what they'll be like?" Eli asked, his curiosity pushing through the layers of fear. "Will they be like you, like her, like you used to be?" The woman's eyes darkened slightly and she looked away. "I don't know," she said quietly. "The men, they were the protectors. They were strong, but they were also part of a system that has long since broken down. They will remember their purpose, but I don't know if they will remember who they were. There is a danger in bringing them back. They may not accept us. They may not accept this new world." Eli swallowed, the weight of her words settling on him. The tension in the air grew heavier, and the rumbling seemed to increase. He felt something stirring beneath the surface, like the planet was waking up from a long, deep sleep. "Is it happening now?" Eli asked, looking around, trying to make sense of the chaos that was building around them. "Yes," the woman said. "They're coming, we must prepare." Eli took a deep breath. His mind raced. What did preparation even mean? They had no weapons, no defenses. It was just him and this alien woman in a strange world that had been dead for so long. The stakes had never been higher, and Eli had no idea what he was supposed to do. But he knew one thing for sure: he wasn't going to stand by and do nothing. The responsibility felt heavy on his shoulders, but he couldn't walk away from it. He had already made his choice when he decided to stay and help her. Now, whatever was coming, they would face it together. Eli looked at the woman, determination hardening in his chest. "What do we need to do?" She hesitated for a moment, her eyes scanning the room, the glowing machine, and the vast expanse of this desolate world. Then her gaze returned to him, and she nodded slowly. "We must go to the temple," she said. "The temple is where it all began. It's where the key to understanding the men lies. If we don't stop them before they reach it, they will take control of this world, and they will make the same mistakes all over again." Without another word, she turned and led the way. Eli followed her, his heart pounding as they moved through the corridors. The building was shaking more violently now, and the distant sound of what could only be described as a rumble, like a thunderstorm rolling in, grew louder. The air smelled different, as though it were charged with the energy of something massive stirring beneath them. Eli wasn't sure what to expect, but he couldn't shake the feeling that whatever happened next, it was going to be monumental. As they reached the outer door of the building, the woman paused and turned to him. "We're close," she said, her voice low. "The temple lies beyond the hills. We have to hurry." Eli nodded, and they both sprinted toward the exit. The building's doors groaned as they pushed them open, and a gust of wind hit them, strong and fierce. The landscape before them was vast and empty, stretching for miles, with the distant hills rising like jagged teeth in the distance. The ground continued to tremble beneath their feet, and Eli could feel his pulse quickening as they ran. The air was thick with the energy of the planet, and the further they went, the more intense the feeling became. He didn't know what awaited them at the temple, but he could sense the urgency. Whatever they had to do, it had to be done quickly. As they reached the hills, the rumbling grew louder, almost deafening. It was as though the planet itself was cracking open, something long hidden beneath the surface making its way back to the light. The woman's pace quickened. She was clearly familiar with the terrain, her movements swift and determined. Eli kept up, though he felt the weight of the situation pressing on him. What if they didn't get to the temple in time? What if the men came before they could do anything? Finally, they reached the top of a hill, and the temple appeared before them. It was ancient, its stone walls cracked and weathered by time, but there was an undeniable sense of power about it. The woman stood still for a moment, her eyes scanning the structure as if it were a memory coming to life. "This is where everything began," she said softly. "This is where the men were first created, where they learned to protect us. If we are to stop them, we must unlock the temple's secrets. We must remember." Eli looked at the temple, its entrance shrouded in shadows. He could feel the power emanating from it like an ancient force stirring. Whatever happened next, he knew they were entering a place that held the answers to everything. The woman turned to him, her expression serious. "Are you ready?" she asked. Eli didn't hesitate. "I'm ready," he said, his voice steady. Together they entered the temple. Inside, the air was heavy, thick with the weight of history. The walls were covered with strange symbols, and the room was filled with an eerie silence. The woman moved toward a pedestal in the center of the room where a small orb rested. The orb glowed faintly, and as she touched it, the symbols on the walls began to shift, glowing with light. Eli watched in awe as the room seemed to come alive. The walls hummed with energy, and the air around them crackled with power. The machine, the temple, the planet itself, it was all connected. The woman looked at Eli, her eyes wide. "It's starting," she whispered. Eli stepped forward, knowing that what happened next would shape the future of this world. Whatever the men had become, whatever had been lost, it was all going to be revealed now. And as the light from the orb filled the room, Eli felt a surge of energy coursing through him. He was ready. Whatever was coming, he would face it, because the fate of this world was now in his hands.